Hello and welcome to everyone listening to the Written Melanin Podcast, the place where you come to get your weekly dose of melanated creativity. I'm your host, CM Lockhart, an author of fantasy books featuring Black girls who aren't all that nice, and the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database of books written by Black authors. And in this space, I invite you to listen to the journeys of Black authors with the hope that you'll gain something from it. I'm glad that you are here. Today, you guys, I'm here with Laura Pegram. She is a multi-hyphenate artist who is influencing a new generation of aspiring writers. Author, educator, and a jazz vocalist with whose cabaret performance teamed with her jazz pianist Donald Smith, Miss Pegram is also a painter. Her richly hued, vibrant murals are part of several private collections, and Pegram was mentored by the poet activist June Jordan, who taught her that the sky was her ceiling. She is the founding editor and publisher of the award-winning literary magazine Kweli Journal, and she is here on the podcast with us today to give us so much insight into her world, her life, her art, and I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh,
Welcome to the podcast.
thank you so much. I am grateful for this opportunity to sit and chat with you. Thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that being said, let's just start at the very beginning. I have your bio, but for the listeners who are just tuning in and meeting you for the first time, please introduce yourself, introduce your book, introduce the Kweli Journal, like new territory for all of us.
Okay, if I were to add to the bio you just read, I'd say I'm also an education activist and a vitamin pusher. And I know the vitamin pusher sounds odd, so let me provide some clarity. When I think about Toni Morrison's Noble Lecture and the line that references songs, literature, and poems full of vitamins, I think of leaning towards that art that shores you up, that gives you the strength to be able to handle whatever society kind of hurls at you, whatever the world kind of throws at you. Um, I am someone who will lean towards those vitamins as a reader, as the founding editor and publisher of Kweli, because I think there's something to be gained in having that nourishment in our art so that we can survive and thrive.
Absolutely. Yeah, because one thing that I will absolutely die on, like this hill that I would die on, is that you need art to sustain yourself. And
Mhm.
this idea that people can live without it or navigate without it, it's just like art informs so much of how we experience our lives. And it's just like you need it to fuel yourself, to connect with the world in ways that you can't always do with a straightforward conversation. Not saying you can't, not dissing communication, but art definitely has a strong place in how we navigate the world. I was, reading your introduction to Sing the Truth. So, for anyone listening to this, before we get too deep into this conversation, Miss Pegram is the editor for Sing the Truth, which is a collection of short stories. And I have a copy here, and y'all know I don't really usually have the book, so get into it. There's a link in the description box. But one of the things that you mentioned in the introduction and the purpose of Kweli is to spotlight and bring to light BIPOC authors and writers and to give them a place. And you mentioned how it is the kickoff point for so many authors, right? And I'm curious, like I would love to know more about it. So can you tell us a little bit how Kweli came to be and also like the purpose behind it?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I started Kweli when I was newly disabled. The idea of Kweli came to me when I was still learning how to walk again, when I was still navigating a very complicated healing process. And I needed some light in my life because my time as an artist in the community had ended abruptly. The only time I left my apartment was to go to and from the hospital, and outside of that, I was home. I was home to try and navigate the pain, the confusion about my prognosis to try to find answers about a way forward when there were more questions than not from the healing practitioners that were trying to stabilize me. And so I needed to find a way back to the arts, which were my oxygen. I've always lived in music and books and even martial arts, and I wanted to find some way to return to some of that. And the answer came in an online circle. So I thought if I could work online with the students, the writers who I used to see regularly at the community center uptown where I volunteered, then that would give me the light I needed to move forward, despite the question marks medically, despite all of the negatives I was receiving from my neurologist and others about my full recovery. The prognosis was poor, but I needed something positive to counter that. And Kweli came to mind. Now, it took me 2 years to go from the idea of Kweli to actually having our first issue online. And that first issue published A Hard Bed by Princess Joy Alperi and Evelise Rodriguez's short story, Ahia de Shango. So those were the two short stories we included in that inaugural issue. And that was the start of it all.
I love the fact that you mentioned that this was an idea that you had and it was born somewhat out of necessity because, like what you said earlier, you needed something that was going to nourish you and bring light into a no doubt difficult experience while you're trying to figure out a new reality, right? Talking about how you had the idea, but it took time for the idea to actually manifest and come to a reality is something that I feel like everyone can hear because even when we have really great ideas, sometimes it takes time to put it together. Sometimes it takes time to work out all the details and to make it a reality. So that part, I guess, for me as an individual is also reassuring because I have so many ideas. And so for me, at least, I can say that seeing your anthology and reading about how it came to be and hearing about the process, for me on my journey with the Melanin Library, it's definitely something that's encouraging because I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? I've had this idea. There are these things that I want to do, but knowing that it doesn't have to be overnight. It doesn't have to be like a snap decision. It doesn't have to be like, okay, Monday we had the idea and by Tuesday we're putting it into action.
I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. I cannot begin to tell you how important it is to trust your instincts and to take your time and to realize that the sky is your ceiling too. And so, whatever you dream after this day or after next week, you can realize. Just take the time and assemble the team that you need to bring it forward.
I appreciate that because that's definitely part of it. Just needing to be like, okay, you got to find the right set of people around you because everyone isn't the right person. And sometimes it's not the right time for the right person. So, kind of waiting for that serendipitous moment where it's just like everything aligns and being prepared when it does is kind of where I'm at. But, you said that, the sky is the ceiling. And I know that in your bio and also in your introduction, you mentioned your mentor, June Jordan, and the impact that she's had on you in your life. And so, one of the things that I talk about a lot on the Melanin Library, on any of my platforms, like anywhere that I basically have a voice, I'm like, you need a community. You need people surrounding you who are going to support you and push you and be there for you and connect with you and not just leave you to your own devices, especially as an author, because that is a really lonely profession and it can be very isolating if you let it. And one of the questions that I had for you was, how did you find your mentor and how you touched on it in your introduction, but also just here, like, how did she have this positive impact on your life? Because it's clear that her influence has stuck with you.
Yes, indeed. I met June at Stony Brook, and she was introduced to me by my counselor, who knew that I loved literature and was playing with the possibilities of minoring in English. I was a pre-med student and I wanted to minor in English. That was my love, my passion. And he said, you should make it a point of meeting June Jordan. And he gave me her office number and I called her and she said that I could take one of her classes. And that started it all. It was a class that focused on work for young teens, where all of the stories we read had child narrators. And that was the beginning. She read my stories, let others within her sister writer circle read them too, and agreed that I was writing a novel. And at 18, I was afraid because I didn't know how to even begin to pull the novel together. But just knowing that she recognized my gift and encouraged it in all the ways was all I needed to just keep moving forward as I studied the sciences and made room for my art. When she heard me playing around with a song once in her office, she said, "You have an incredible voice. You have this beautiful instrument." And she set upon creating a platform for me to share that with folks. So we did a tribute to Billie Holiday, and that was my first time performing in public, and it was nerve-wracking beyond measure. And then I think when she realized that I was also a visual artist and painted, she saw a painting that I had of my father in my dorm. She said, "Girl, you can do anything you set your mind to." And so I was the artist who also created the program for that production on Billie Holiday. It was called Lady Day Night. So June gave me the freedom to fly. My mom was also a self-taught artist. She was a self-taught visual artist. And I would be by her side when she'd be creating these portraits of jazz singers. Jazz was always heard in our home growing up. I think whenever I hear Sarah Vaughan or Billie Holiday, I think about the first moments as a child listening to the music that was coming from the stereo. So June gave me permission to kind of move forward with any dreamscape, whether I wanted to write or sing or paint or produce. She made me know that it was possible, despite the limitations. If I was bouncing in and out of the hospital, she would come into the hospital room with books, with flowers, and laughter. Somehow she always had me laughing, even if I was in pain. And she told me, there is a way beyond this setback. And that's what I held on to. And each and every time I had a setback, I held on to the feeling or the truth that I would get past this point. I just had to hold on to the light or remember what was possible and visualize what I wanted to realize.
I love that. I love so much of that because it's just having someone who believes in you so wholeheartedly is something that really can change your trajectory. I won't say change your life, but definitely change your trajectory as an artist. Because I like to believe that if you are an artist in the truest sense, it doesn't matter in what medium, whether it be musical, visual, writing, whatever, however you choose to create art, right? If that really lives in you, you're gonna find a way to do that and to create it and to share it, right?
Yes.
But when you have someone in your corner who believes so wholeheartedly in you and sees the spark and the joy and the light that you have to share, and they're like, you can't keep this to yourself. Like, you need to feed this, you need to grow this, you need to share this, you need to stand firmly 10 toes down in it and let this be a part of who you are. That there's something about that meeting, and it's sometimes it's just one person, or maybe it's just the first person who just sees that and pushes you to live in it, that really kind of changes everything, right? And I think about that sometimes because I know that, like, for me it was my husband. He was like, "Oh, you're like actually really good at this," and I'm like, "Cool."
Yes.
But as I've grown, right, as I've matured, and have been doing this longer, I also realized there's also something really powerful in not just forever being the mentee, not like having someone in your corner for sure, but also growing into that place where you feel secure and confident enough to be there for someone else and help them grow into the person that you see them capable of being. And for me, I started doing coaching services online and being like, hey, I'm an indie author. I can help, right? So a lot of what I do has kind of like blossomed from that.
Yeah.
But you have the Kweli Journal and you teach, and you were mentioned also doing work at your art center, and I know that your life changed and that had to shift, but I guess also for you as a person, how was that shifting from being the mentee and having someone rooting for you and doing the, I'll say, the big labor of believing in you and helping you bring all of your talents to fruition by encouraging you? How has it been shifting from needing that support to being the one giving that support? Because you teach classes and things online. You've created this community in this space where you're bringing people together and giving them opportunities. So how's it feel to be on the other side of that mentor mentee relationship?
Oh, that's a great question too. When I think about being a mentor, I go back to being the big sister. I come from a family of nine, and so I had younger siblings. As a teen, when I was in high school, I worked at the local library, and I would take my younger siblings with me each summer to read and to work on papers. Like they still remind me to this date how I made them write papers in the summer for each book that I had assigned to them. And I always say, well, you should thank me because, you have a successful business because I was on you, you know, because I made you work. The summer was not time strictly for play. We had opportunities for play, but it was also about keeping the learning going, like not breaking that cycle or that loop just because school or traditional school was out. My mom worked, both of my parents worked, and so the older siblings were responsible for the younger ones. So I feel as if I was always mentoring in some way. When I started college, that continued because I was tutoring folks who were interested in the sciences. Switching from being a mentee with June was relatively easy because I think she gave me a lot of confidence. When I would submit a story to her, I actually appreciated when she marked it all up, had notes from top to bottom, because I wanted to improve my craft, right? I wanted to learn how to be a strong writer, right? To how to communicate a story effectively and create a work of art. And when I first heard her say, now this is a story, I was overjoyed. My heart was singing because I knew that was the first story that got her thumbs up, right? And I still have it. Like I go back to those actual pages and look at her notes again, and the feeling in that time flows back as if it were yesterday. So giving back to others has always been part of my DNA, I think, as an older sibling who was raised to always think about giving back, whether it was to my younger sisters and brothers or to others in the community. That's just how I was programmed to move through the world, and it has never stopped. So mentoring Kweli folks was a continuation of what I did at the Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center when I would donate time after work. I would leave work, rush to the center because that was really the highlight of my day. It was truly my oxygen, working with new writers and emerging writers who wanted to write for children or who wanted to write adult fiction. That was really the thing that fueled me, right? And got me excited because I knew I was giving what I learned from June and others back to them. Yeah. And that continues to be the circle that I share with writers who have or are about to publish their first book. Give back in the way that you were given. Be as generous, be as honest and earnest about what's needed to kind of walk this path. and here are the tools, and here's how I'm going to help you.
I love that. I love that so much because I've said this before and I'll probably say it again at some point, but I feel like so much of publishing, especially for Black creators, is shrouded in like smoke and mirrors. And there's so much that's, I know that I want to do this and I know that I have this thing that I want to share. I just don't know how to get from point A to point B. And so whenever there is a system of support, whenever there is a system of, okay, we figured it out or we can get there, you know, I am always like, okay, but once you get on the other side of that door, don't slam it behind you. Like, once you get where you're going, make sure that you leave some breadcrumbs so that other people can follow behind you. It's not, it's like, it's for you, yes, because I want to see you be successful, speaking in generalities, right? But also, I want to see everyone be successful, not just you climb this ladder and then pull up the rungs behind you, you know?
Yes, indeed. There's a
So,
motto that I started Kweli with before we launched our first issue, which is lift as you climb. And that continues to guide every step. When I lift a writer up, I want them to then take that mantle. So I'll ask them to moderate a panel, or I'll ask them to teach a craft lesson, or I'll ask them, can you teach this 3-hour masterclass? I work with you in developing your short story. Your short story was received in a way which led you to securing an agent. Your book is in the world. You've received recognition for this work of art. And at every step along the way, I think you can teach, right? After you publish your short story in Kweli, you can teach others what we discussed during our editorial sessions. Those are lessons that you can communicate effectively. It's your time now. Yeah. At each step along the way. When the book came out, now it's time for you to share with a wider audience. I'm going to give you the opportunity to keynote for our literary festival. So there were moments at each and every stage for the writer where they were able to soar because I gave them those opportunities to do so.
and that's so necessary because the thing is, as you navigate through life and through your career, it's always nerve wracking to experience something new and to be, I'll say, responsible. Because as you do these things, as you like you said, you get the opportunities and you navigate these situations and you learn and you pick up things, especially subtle things that you're like, man, I wish somebody had told me this before I got knee deep into this or I made a misstep. And it's one of those things that you don't think about until, and then you're just like, let me tell someone else. So the fact that not only are you teaching and mentoring, but also following that up with giving people opportunities to teach and mentor themselves, I feel like that is so impactful because I know that I have definitely met my fair share of authors who are like, I would if I knew how to, but they are also not creating opportunities for themselves to do those things. But it's like if they have the opportunity to do so, they'll happily take it. So I love that you're encouraging that and being like, pay it forward, take it, but also pay it forward.
Exactly. A lot of authors have told me that I was the first one to give them that opportunity to say keynote before their book came into the world, or who gave them the opportunity to teach to help them feel comfortable with the process of playing the role of that artist educator. And I'm grateful for that because I think June always made me understand that I was capable of doing anything, right? As someone who was really shy, like painfully shy, that was important to hear because I preferred to be at the back of the room, up against the wall, observing it all. But she pushed me forward, gently kept pushing me forward until I was comfortable. And even when I wasn't comfortable,
No, that's real.
she still she still pushed me forward. And that's how I think got to this place where I can hold my own. Not that there aren't moments when I don't get nervous because I still get nervous at each and every turn. And it's partly due to the fact that I want to do my best. And I think though that nervous energy is helpful, right? Before I sing, before I give a presentation, I'm a nervous wreck in the back of the room waiting to go on. But then once I start, the nervous tension kind of falls off and I can hit that first note of the song, or I can, begin that presentation and feel at ease.
Oh yeah, I get it 100% because one of the things that I always tell my clients and just other authors that I talk to in general, because I know that at this point, like where I'm at in my life and my career, I definitely give off the energy of like, oh, Chelsea, you can talk to anyone. And I'm like, that is a learned skill, my friend. That is something that I had to practice a lot because as writers, especially, a lot of us are introverts. We picked a profession that is very isolated where you most of it you're in a room by yourself, right? And we prefer it that way. But there's also the reality that there is a human connection piece to everything. And you may be writing alone, but you're writing a story to connect with other people.
Sure.
And it's something that I'm not gonna say you have to because I never say you have to do anything, but it is definitely one of the things that I feel like is a step in the right direction in your career when you learn how to be perceived,
Right.
I'll say, how to stand in front of a room or even a small audience and be able to be like, I am confident in what I know, and I feel confident being able to share that with you and articulate that with you, and know that, yes, I still have room to learn. I still have room to grow. No one's ever done learning or growing, but I also have accumulated enough that I can share this with you and I can share this with others, and it holds value.
Yeah.
And being able to do that is something that you don't really get comfortable with until you do it enough to get comfortable with it,
Very
if that
true.
makes
It
sense.
does make sense.
You know?
And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yes, I am so proud of you. And again, grateful for you and all of the initiatives that you're going to start in the years that come. I'm going to applaud you at each and every stage. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. That,
But the
that is
learning
so
doesn't
meaningful
stop. If
and
you're lucky, the learning does not stop. Like Toni Morrison used to say,
ever.
she learns something new with each book that she writes, right? Every book that she wrote, she learned something new from that process. And Edward P. Jones would say it's like starting at the bottom of the mountain with each and every project, right? Blank page, blank screen. You're starting at the bottom of the mountain. I never feel as if I've learned everything. I think I learn with each story I edit. I learn with each book that I closely read. I learn with every author who will share their response to an editorial note. I learn every step along the way. I never feel as if I'm somehow finished, right? I see myself as a work in progress in the same way that manuscripts are works in progress.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's something that I kind of want to touch on a little bit deeper, the closely reading, because you also mentioned earlier that, you know, your mentor, the one of the memories that you have is of her marking up your work and pushing you to be better. And it's something that I always tell authors, like in general, like when you are building your community, like you definitely need your hype men who are going to be like, you're great, you're fantastic, who are going to hype you up. But you also need that trusted community that's going to, like, as you mentioned, rip your stuff apart, who's going to push you to be better, who's going to be like, hey, you did this great, but this could be better. Like, you've come this far, but I think you can go further. And those people who are going to push you to be the best version of yourself. And not only that, but also with your own work, engaging with you in such a way that you can read other people's work and be like, oh, this is what they're doing. This is what I see. And that process of being able to, like you said, read closely and really process what someone else has done, I think leads you to being a better writer, to not just studying craft books and going to lessons, but seeing the craft and understanding the craft and how it comes together in a finished product. And I know that is a big part of what you do as an editor, but also a huge part of what you do for Kweli and for putting together Seeing the Truth. So I would love to know more about your experience with that, because this is to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Kweli. And so I can only imagine how many submissions and how many pieces of work you guys had to go through in order to narrow it down to 14 stories to go in this.
Oh my goodness. It was one of the most difficult tasks that we had before us, trying to start with maybe 22 pieces from the hundreds of pieces we published, and then whittling down that number to 14. I kept going back and saying, oh, I think I have two more. Can we add two more for consideration? And then I would turn around and then say, oh, one more, one more. So the list kept growing because it was hard for me to select art that I loved when I loved everything I published. So how do you do that? When you love every piece and you have to say, these are my favorite children. Like parents can't say that. This is my favorite child. And I couldn't do it as the founding editor and publisher of Kweli. It was really difficult. I struggled with it for a bit. And I still think that there could have been others included in this anthology, but we had a limit of stories. I love the selections that live and sing the truth. They make my heart sing. And I love the other pieces that we have published over the years that also made me sing. Really difficult and challenging task to assemble this book. When I think about the editing process, there are stories that I would spend a considerable amount of time with before I approached the writer with suggestions. And I think that's because I wanted to take my role as an editor seriously. And I learn again with each work. Every story taught me something new and important about the process. And every moment I had or opportunity I had to engage with the artist also taught me a lot. And I think I'm still learning. I had a session with a writer who's going to be featured in our May 12th issue on mothering. And those exchanges taught me so much. This is her debut short story, and I'm so excited to be able to share that. I have always tried to fall back on mentors on the page like Toni Morrison, Edwidge Dandicott, Edward P. Jones, Jhumpa Lahiri, folks who I return to again and again because I learn from their technique on the page, and that informs me so I can best or be the best editor or third eye for the artist that I'm working with. And Toni Morrison would say that good editors are the third eye, right? They tell you what works, and they also tell you where you can return to shore something up. The
Mm-hmm.
passages that maybe you didn't have time to really address because you were on deadline, and Lord knows deadlines are difficult to change when you're looking at
Yeah.
a release date. So I continue to learn from these mentors on the page, from those mentors on the page that I lean towards heavily, because every writer has their own mentor on the page. But the ones that I return to again and again are the ones who help me to be the best editor I can be.
There's so much just like golden nuggets that I hope people are listening to and appreciating because
Mm.
having mentors on the page, having authors that you can pick up and read and learn from is so important. But also just touching on I'll say, the necessity of having an editor, and not just having an editor, but having a good editor that engages with your work, that reads with it, that sits with it, that considers how to approach you and how to strengthen things and how to not morph your voice into something that it's not, but really bring it out and polish it. And to, like you said, you enjoy the authors who sit with you, what you've given them, and have a dialogue and a conversation with you, and not just, I'll say, taking it personally, because I know, having been on both sides of that editing relationship, it can be difficult
Yes.
sometimes when you do get feedback, especially if it's not what you thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
But to be able to have a relationship with someone where it's just like, okay, I hear you. I'm going to sit with this, and then I'm going to come back to you, and we're going to discuss this, and we're going to polish this into something that's going to be really spectacular
Mhm.
at the end. It's just, I always advocate for finding someone like that who can be in your corner, who's going to do that, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also like, I'm mildly jealous because I'm like, "Ugh, I would love to have an editor who really engages with my work on that level. I
You
know
do.
that.
Now you do. We're in touch. You're my sister, and I'm willing to help you in any way I can because we're no longer strangers.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
like my heart is so full right now because one of the things that I always am about is, supporting other creators and supporting other people who are out here, I'll say, doing the good work, and not just in how they say it, not just in word, but in deed.
Mhm.
And it's just kind of like, like talking to you, you are truly genuinely one of those people where it's just like you really stand behind supporting people. It's not something that you just say for to put on a good face, but really like genuinely you care. And
Yeah.
like I appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for being who you are and for
Oh,
being present and for creating space for so many creators to come together and be themselves and be the best versions of themselves and creating opportunities so that they can
okay.
exist in this space and move forward. Like you're doing amazing work and I appreciate you for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. That means everything. Everything. I was recently reminded about the number of writers whose lives I had changed, and I never really considered it before. I was just taking one day at a time and trying to do the best I could for the artists who submitted work to Kweli or the artists who were taking a workshop with me to give them 200%. And I wasn't really kind of cataloging all of the success stories until someone started to point them out to me and I said, "Oh, wow. Oh, okay." Let me pause for a
Yeah.
second. Let me pause for a second. It's beautiful to know that I had a hand in helping others, right? Because that has always been my way. Community is really so important to me. And from the moment I started teaching and giving back, it's what has guided my steps. Now, can I do this type of work with every single writer who submits work to Kweli? That's more challenging because I am essentially the only one who works one on one with the writers that we
Mm.
publish. I think if we had a larger team, it might be a little bit more manageable. I say this knowing that authors who want to be a part of Quady's community also have responsibilities to family, responsibilities to parents that they are taking care of, responsibilities to their publisher with deadlines that are rapidly approaching. And so I keep that in mind. People may want to do X and Y and Z, but they also have to be mindful of balance, of taking care of themselves when they are parents who are constantly in motion, constantly putting themselves last on the list. So I'm grateful for the ones who carve out time during the course of the year, even if they can't commit to editing work. Enjoy it. I just have to make sure that I also am mindful of self-care.
Oh yeah, finding the balance is something that is just like it can be a struggle. It can be an uphill balance with anyone because especially when you are a giver and you are filled with, just kindness and touching other people's lives. It's like you want to do everything for everyone. You want to support the community. You want to support the authors. You want to continue building the things that you've built, but it's also like sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you need to rest. Sometimes you just need a burger and a movie and just to relax. And I know that, at least for me, speaking for myself, it can definitely feel like a struggle and feel almost selfish if you're like, I'm not doing this for
Mhm.
other people, I'm not giving. And it's just like, sometimes you have to be reminded that you can't pour from an empty cup, and sometimes you have to be still long enough for your cup to be filling or overflowing for you to be able to give it to someone else.
Very true.
That balance is important. But that being said, I know that we've been talking about all of this and how the Kweli Journal and the anthology have come together and they're so heavily intermingled. But when people pick up this collection of short stories, what do you hope that they will take from it? Like how
Yeah.
they will engage with it?
Mm. I hope that they see the beauty and the light and the vitamins on each page, returning to Toni Morrison's noble lecture and her way of referring to songs and literature and poems full of vitamins. So I hope that they register the nuance, the nourishment, the beauty, the ability to see things anew on each and every page. I want them to feel changed by the experience of spending time with these artists. I want them to know that there was or there is a gift in every single story we have published in this anthology. And I want them to return to the work because I think repeated readings allow you to see things that you may have missed the first time around. In the same way that I will read something multiple times in a deeply layered work of art and see something new with those successive readings and feel nourished each and every time. That's what I hope that they take away, that new perspective on life or that new window on another community has routinely been depicted in the media as other. I want them to know more and then take that knowledge, that nourishment, those vitamins, and think about how they can make a change in this world. That's what I hope. I know it's a lot, but I hope that some of that finds its way forward.
I love that. I love that. And you know, if you guys are listening to this or watching this, there will be a link so that you guys can pick up a copy of Seeing the Truth. That being said, we are coming up on 45 minutes. So I have a question that I ask everyone who comes on the podcast. And that is, what writing advice would you give to any new authors who are just starting out on their journey? I know we've given a lot of advice throughout the podcast, but like one definitive piece for someone who is trying to take that leap from being like, I want to write, to I am writing. I am a writer. I am an author.
Thank you. I think this is a good note to end on. I would say a few things. One, read as if the next day you will lose your eyesight. And that's a quote that I share with my workshop students every single week. Read as if the next day you will lose your eyesight. And that's a quote from Ben Okri. I remember going to one of his readings years ago, and that quote stayed with me. I put it down in my journal. I return to it always, not only as a teaching artist, but as a writer as well. The other thing I would say is be able to read your work as if it's been written by someone else. You want to be emotionally distant enough from the work that you have on the page to be able to see where the holes are. Sometimes if you're too close to it, you'll think, oh, everything here sings, right? It's beautiful and it has beauty, but there are also areas that need to be shored up. And that's what you want to address. So you want to be able to read it from an emotionally distant place so you can then address the things that need your attention, right? So that you can create that deeply layered work of art. And then third, I would say, trust your instincts, right? Trust your ancestors who are always guiding your steps. I would say if you do those three things, you are in a good place as an artist on their way.
Absolutely. For once, I actually have nothing to add to that. I stand by that 100%. Especially the trust your gut, trust your ancestors. You have to trust that you are going to write and tell the story that you are meant and given to write and tell.
Yes.
And sometimes I guess I will add that it's okay if that isn't to completion. Sometimes we start stories that we aren't meant to finish, and sometimes we finish stories that we really needed to get to. So it's okay if your journey takes you up, down, sideways, left, whatever. Just trust yourself, trust your writing, trust your gut, and you'll end up in the right place where you need to be. We all do.
I And on that note, I'd like to invite you to join me as my guest for the next iteration of our Art of the Short Story Writing Workshop, which begins on May 20th, I believe. You are welcome to attend the 6-week cycle, and we can start working on that promise to you to help you in any way possible.
For sure. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I will definitely give that some serious thought because today, as of recording, just so you guys know, is May 8th. That's also the workshop is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yes. I teach them twice a month, so there are other opportunities down the line, so you could hold on to that too.
Awesome, for sure. That being said, can you let our listeners know where they can find you online to know more about your workshops, the anthology, the Kweli Journal, all of it?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. You can find Kweli online at kwelijournal.org. The workshops are largely online. We have students from around the globe who are studying with us on how to best develop their craft and technique in the art of the short story. We have our anthology, Sing the Truth, launching on the 13th next week. And on the 14th, we'll have our book launch event at the Harlem School of the Arts. It'll be hosted by Word Up Community Bookshop, who has essentially been with Kweli from the very beginning. They have been by our side selling books at all of our events. So it's a joy to be able to partner with them on this special occasion, this 15th anniversary celebration of our first collection of short stories. 15th, we'll have a book launch celebration at Books Are Magic in Brooklyn. And then on the 22nd, we'll have another celebration at the Barnes and Nobles on West 82nd Street. Those are the three big parties that we have coming up, all for looking at Sing the Truth, ordering it. Pre-orders are available now, and they will be in the bookstores. The books will be in the bookstores on May 13th.
Awesome. Fantastic. And of course, you guys know, like I said, there will be links to all of this. So wherever you listen to this at, whether it be a podcast or YouTube, check out the show notes or the description box. I'll have all that information there for you guys. That being said, that is it for this episode of the Written Melanin Podcast. If you like to support this podcast, then please share it with someone that you think may enjoy it. Join our membership on the Melanin Library website. Grab a copy of my books from my website, cmlockhart.com, or donate to the podcast so that we can continue making content for you guys. There are links in the show notes / description box for everything. And thank you again so much for listening. Until next time, I hope all your books are full of melanin.